Will you take a bit of advice from an old woman? He's a clever man, your hand. I've known a great many clever men. I've outlived them all. You know why? I ignored them.
Daenerys Targaryen was told to beware of the words of clever men. She was also told that she'd be betrayed for love. In this video, I want to discuss how Tyrion's meeting with Cersei will play out in Game of Thrones Season 8 and what that means. This video does contain major filming spoilers for Game of Thrones Season 8. So if you don't want to know anything about that, go ahead and click out of the video right now. For everyone else, grab some tissues and let's begin. Before we get started, please slap a like on this video as the like goal will be 420, and also make sure you're subscribed and then make sure you have your notifications turned on all the way. It's my job to keep you entertained throughout this long nights. Okay, so jumping back to what I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Tyrion is made to be one of the most clever characters in all of Game of Thrones. Not just on the TV show, but in the books as well. He's always regarded as one of the smartest and cleverest characters. So when Olenna is telling Daenerys to basically be mindful of him in Game of Thrones Season 7 Episode 2, she's warning him that the only reason why Olenna herself has outlived many clever men, many strong heroes, is because she ignored them. She tells Daenerys that she's a dragon, and that to be a dragon, you must act like one. So basically this, in my opinion, is major foreshadowing to Daenerys following the advice of Tyrion and this causing her to have some hardship, which does happen in Season 7, but ultimately ignoring his advice. Now I know the main point of this video is going to be Tyrion's betrayal, and we're going to get to that. I'm saving those spoilers for a little bit. I just want to lay all the groundwork that Game of Thrones Season 7 did, so this will not be as big of a shock once we do discuss it. Now, one of my favorite things to talk about in my videos is this look that Tyrion gives once he walks out of the shadows and realizes that Jon and Daenerys have initiated boat sex. This is a look of pure jealousy. Now, for the longest, I've been reminding people that Tyrion, Peter Dinklage, has mentioned in an interview prior to Season 7 rather, that he was in love with Daenerys. So working with her is going to be a bit awkward since he sees her in that light and that aspect. Well, Dinklage did another interview, and this one is way more recent as of a few days ago. In this interview, he mentions, now this is actually a quote directly from the article, and it's done by Entertainment Weekly, and like I said, this is from a few days ago. When Tyrion is basically asked, or Peter Dinklage rather, is asked what exactly that look means and what's going on in his mind during this cryptic scene. And Peter Dinklage responds with, well, it's complicated. A lot of the time with Tyrion, it's professional and personal. Obviously, he has feelings for Daenerys. He loves her, or he thinks he does. She's awe-inspiring. He's questioning that because he doesn't have a good track record for falling in love. There's obviously some jealousy wrapped up in there, and he loves Jon Snow too. They're two people he has the most in common with. In a way, they're both outsiders in their own families who have refused to follow their path their family has taken, and hopefully for the better. He's wondering how smart of a move Jon and Daenerys getting romantically involved is, because passion and politics don't mesh well. He knows the two of them getting together could be very dangerous. Thank you, Peter. All of those people who love commenting on my videos, telling me that Tyrion is not as in love with Daenerys, well, bam, smack in the face for you. Now, I know I'm interpreting that the way that I want to because he said he thinks that he's in love with her. But to me, the follow-up to that, which was, he doesn't have the best record of falling in love. You have that Shae shout out. The fact that he's equating the love that he felt for Shae to similar to how he feels for Daenerys now just confirms to me that, yes, he's in love with Daenerys. I mean, how could you not be? Look at her when she walks through the hallway. I'm just like, burn me, please. We're getting back on track here. One of the two most important things he says in this interview that we need to take out for this video is the fact that he is jealous, and that also he doesn't know how much of a good idea it would be for Jon and Daenerys to become romantically involved. But the key phrase there is that there's jealousy mixed up in there. So I think he is a little bit right in the sense that it may not be the best of ideas for Jon and Daenerys to get together, but if you remember earlier on in the season, he was telling Daenerys that she needs to come up with an heir. If she dies, then all of this is for nothing, and that everything that she stands for and everything she's fighting for will die with her because she is not yet named an heir. So the fact that she chose Jon Snow, he's obviously one of the best alliances she could ever make. The fact that Tyrion is saying that, or Peter Dinklage rather is saying that, part of that look is he doesn't know if it's going to be a good political match, tells me it's a load of crap. It's all 100% jealousy. Now, obviously, the actor is going to have more complex and more in-depth, basically behind-the-scenes sort of thing, so he can know what's going on in the mind frame of Tyrion. But to me, the fact that I heard him say jealousy relates it back to this meeting that he has with Cersei Lannister.
Fire and blood until I advised her otherwise. I don't want to destroy our family. I never have.
Now, we're partially shown what the context of what is said in this, but we're also left with sort of a blackout, and then we just cut to Tyrion coming out. Right before Tyrion goes back there, the most important thing to take away from the conversation he has with Jon Snow is that sometimes lying is good. So I think what was said in that conversation is that Tyrion told Cersei whatever he needed to in order to get her to go along with, or rather, at least he thinks he got her to go along with the plan, which was to send troops and help them fight the armies of the dead. But that little white lie that he told to Cersei off camera may turn into a true deal that he may uphold just for the fact that his jealousy could get the better of him. Maybe he, in his mind, comes up with a twisted idea of why Jon and Daenerys' union won't work out. Or maybe why Daenerys shouldn't sit the Iron Throne, because if you remember, in episode 4, when Tyrion was actually watching the Battle of the Loot Train and all the death and destruction and violence that Daenerys caused, basically with just her and her dragons, he saw that there was going to be a bunch more of this, and he almost witnessed the death of Jaime. So that sort of emotional impact, and then, with her burning the Tarleys, I think that, along with jealousy and many other reasonings, are going to make Tyrion do something that may get him killed. Maybe he realizes that Cersei would be the best choice because she's already sitting the Iron Throne, and perhaps she would be a better fit for the crown rather than Daenerys. She does have a violent streak, but she doesn't have 3 dragons, or 2 rather, and an army of screaming invaders who do nothing but rape and pillage. I think that's going to be the main convincing for Tyrion to sort of betray Daenerys, is because he's going to argue that he wants what's best for the kingdom, and the way that she's going about taking the 7 kingdoms and maybe fighting for the Long Night's not the best way to do this, because remember, he protested insanely against her taking dragons straight to the Red Keep, which is what she wanted to do, and he also tried to talk her down from burning the Tarleys. So I think this right here, these reasons that I just gave you, are going to be the main motivation for Tyrion to betray Daenerys. And now on to the spoilers. Now, before we really delve into these spoilers, I've linked down below in the description all of Reddit/Freefolk. Now, I could individually go through and point out certain things, but these sources come from so many different locations, and there have been thousands of air quotations rather, plot leaks this entire long night that it's impossible to go through and try to name all these spoilers. So I just linked down below Reddit/Freefolk, and you can go and check it out for yourself. Now, one of the biggest spoilers that has been brought to my attention, or one of the ones that I keep bringing myself back to trying to figure out, is this spoiler right here, and that's of Jon Snow seemingly meeting up with Cersei Lannister in King's Landing. Now, this took place midway throughout the filming season, and a lot of people have tried to call bullshit on this by saying that these are photoshopped and not very well. Well, I initially said yes, most likely, or the directors of the show, Dan and Dave, who you can see right here in the background, they told the photographer guy to go out there, take these pictures, and they leaked them online just to throw us off. I don't want to say that it's photoshopped for the simple fact that these were most likely taken with a zoom lens. So all of these areas over to the right and to the left of Cersei, where people are saying you can tell that's heavily photoshopped, or that, these are from season 7 and these are just some pictures that we never got to see, I don't think that's the case. I do Photoshop all the time for my videos, and a lot of these pictures that people think are photoshopped are most likely just zoomed in lenses, so that's why you get this blurry background. So every time I bring myself back to this leak, I'm thinking like, what could be the possible reason for Jon Snow to be in King's Landing, other than the fact that, my 2 favorite ones rather are that Winterfell's been burned down, which we do have spoilers that Winterfell will be set ablaze at some point during this season, unless Game of Thrones showrunners were, just sort of trolling us and they were done filming at Winterfell, so they decided to burn the set. But that's not the case, because we've seen green screens out there. We know that there's going to be a major battle at Winterfell that will result in Winterfell falling. So my big thing about theorizing, why Jon Snow's in King's Landing is most likely because he's got to take refuge there. There's no other place for him to go that's big enough to keep all of the survivors from Winterfell. The best place he can go is to Cersei. Maybe she can uphold that pact that she said she would help him. She's never sent the troops yet. Maybe Jon's showing up here is him basically having to bend the knee to her, so to speak, just so that he can allow his people a safe place of refuge during this long night. And King's Landing would make a way better defense point to fight the Night King anyway, because we've already got so many assets there, and there's all these weapons that are being thrown up on the wall. So most likely the final battle will take place in King's Landing. But another option that I really didn't want to entertain which is totally reasonable to assume given these pictures, is that Jon Snow is actually held hostage, and that the reason why he's there is because Cersei's army, either that be, Euron's troops, the Golden Company, or some of her Lannister soldiers, are successful in capturing Jon Snow on the road to Winterfell. If this is the case, she would have to have some sort of inside help. The reason why I say this is because it's highly unlikely that Jon Snow, with 2 dragons, this army that's coming with him, all of these Dothraki and Unsullied, that it would be possible to get in and, capture him without having some massive battle. So I don't think that's the case. I think it's some sort of inside job. Not gonna lie, I mainly got this idea from a fan fiction / fake leak that I read several months back on the Reddit / Freefolk about how Tyrion does turn Jon Snow in, and that's mainly because he's jealous of the love between Jon and Daenerys, but also because technically Jon Snow is in open rebellion, being the king of the north, and Cersei plans on using Jon as a bargaining chip in order to get Daenerys to leave Westeros and leave the Seven Kingdoms to her by returning Jon Snow, or she'll kill him if she doesn't leave. Now, I know that's pretty far-fetched, and I just wanted to mention it. So I think at this point in the video, it's safe to say that, I've laid out a good ground line and maybe some foreshadowing, some potential foreshadowing. Oh, wait, I forgot one thing. There is actually a scene in the final episode of Game of Thrones Season 7 where Tyrion is walking with many other second-tier characters to the Dragon Pit. And while he's walking, there's a bunch of weird angling in this, and I guess it's because they're meant to show you how grandiose this Dragon Pit is, and they're trying to make us uneasy because we don't really know, or trust rather, what Cersei's going to do in these scenes. So when they do this, the framing of it is just really weird. There's a moment where Tyrion appears to be in the center of it, and everyone is sort of walking around him, almost as if it's foreshadowing to something. But during the walk, he mentions how, or he's explaining rather, what the Dragon Pit used to be. And he mentions how at the beginning, dragons didn't really know the difference of what their land was, so this is why they were kept there. But at the end of the Dragon Pit and its usage, it was mainly held to just keep these small, pathetic creatures, and they're just basically shells of their former selves. And it's sad that this is what the Dragon Pit is reduced to, is just holding these sickly creatures in cages pretty much. But anyway, a few months back, the biggest spoilers, or the biggest confirmed filming leaks rather, had been released through Watchers on the Wall, and that was that a bunch of actors and actresses were piling up in Seville, and that almost every single main or second tier cast that's now main cast in this final season was filmed in this location, that they were going to be taking part in this massive scene that's in the Dragon Pit. Now that has led to a bunch of speculation online about what could be going on there. And supposedly there have been several leakers on Reddit / Freefolk who claim that not every single person who showed up in Seville was actually there to film a scene, and instead was there for some sort of rap party for Game of Thrones in and of its entirety. But there is definitely a major scene that's going to take place in Game of Thrones Season 8 involving this Dragon Pit. The way that it was introduced as this meeting, or this meshing point of all of these different storylines and characters finally being in the same scene together, the way that that was built up means some significance, and I would not be surprised if we see it again in Season 8, which of course we are, because like I said, all of these actors were spotted filming here. Now supposedly, out of the actors that showed up in Seville, the only few that were filmed during this scene, or confirmed to be filming during this scene, were Arya, Tyrion, Sansa. There were reported sighting by Los Siete Reinos that Bran Stark was in the area, also Gwendolyn Christie, that's Brienne of Tarth. You have Davos, Jorah, Kit Harington, Samwell Tarly. All of these characters were said to be taking place during this filming at Seville, which, stood in for the Dragon Pit last season. Now, in my mind, that really could only be one of two things. One is that there's this massive wedding that's taking place in the Dragon Pit, and maybe Jon and Daenerys are successful in conquering King's Landing, and Daenerys convinces Jon to have their wedding in King's Landing in the south because, maybe Jon's starting to embrace his Targaryen heritage. So this scene is just some giant wedding, and this is why every single character is filming during this scene. Now, most recently, some of the juiciest news in all of this all-season has come out by a fellow Game of Thrones YouTuber, Friki Doctor, and he's actually released this video in Q&A, and I do not speak fluent Spanish, so I had to thank all of the people who translated over on Reddit / Freefolk, but for the most part, he does have a lot of speculation mixed in with some of the theories that he shared, but he did confirm two major things. One is that Tyrion is a traitor, and also he will be judged. So during this scene at the Dragon Pit, this is actually Tyrion's trial. Now, one thing that was left out, and he says he may release this information next week, and he kind of wanted to wait until he had the complete information, but one thing that's not mentioned is what Tyrion does to betray Daenerys that warrants this death or this trial scene, which ultimately results in his death. Now, that's got my brain lighting up and racking right now. And real quick, since you just heard this news, go ahead and type down in my comments section, what do you think Tyrion did? My speculation is that he had to do something crazy, something insane that would just make Daenerys be like, you know what? I'm done with you. I'm choosing fire and blood. Now, one of the main things that everyone took away from this, like sort of this major scene that was filmed in Seville, and a lot of the other leakers have confirmed that not every single actor that showed up is actually filming during this scene, so it's not some massive wedding. Freaky Doctor, whose YouTube channel I've actually linked down below in the description, also mentioned that the betrayal or the figuring out that Tyrion has betrayed them will be in a scene involving Jon Snow, Arya, Sansa, and Daenerys. So, however, or whatever it is that Tyrion does to betray Daenerys to warrant this death, it's discovered by a group of some of the people who have the most say-so in whether he lives or dies. Now, I'm just going to mention my speculation before wrapping this video up. I think that Tyrion betrays Daenerys in the way that I mentioned from that fake leak that I read a few months ago. I think that Tyrion somehow manages to make a plan with Cersei, and basically that she's going to give Jon Snow over to her so that she can finally wipe out that threat in the north after he destroys the Night King, and that he plans on convincing Daenerys to go back to Essos, and maybe that she should have stayed there and never came across the Narrow Sea to begin with. If you remember, early on in this series, before they ever left, you know, back in season 6, Tyrion kind of had this mentality anyway. He's like, you're pretty much doing what you want to do over there, over here, so why don't we just stay here? Remember, Daenerys is completely against that. So maybe Tyrion does this, somehow convinces her to wait for the right moment and maybe capture Jon Snow, or maybe he makes a deal with her that never actually goes through, and she just uses this. Maybe there's a correspondence of ravens, and she uses this as bait to pit everyone against each other. Maybe there's a scene where Cersei's on her last leg, she's being thrown into the black cells, and she delivers an Olenna style message like, hey, Tyrion, the guy you think is so loyal to you, actually caused this scene or whatever, something that we haven't been spoiled for yet, to happen. Real quick, I just wanted to add this in. Now, during that filming at Seville, even though Kit Harington was there was a rumor that he actually did no filming because he was never really seen during that filming process. Well, they could have filmed his scenes indoor because maybe what he was wearing or what he was doing would have been too spoilery. And then there was also the issue of Emilia Clarke not being there. So if this was Daenerys Targaryen's trial for Tyrion betraying her, then why is she not present there? Well, Daenerys will most likely be on Dragonback. That means that she probably filmed inside, all surrounded by a CGI screen, and then she'll be later digitally added in by post-production. I think that if Tyrion is decided guilty, and since we know he's going to die according to those leaks, then maybe she burns him on her dragon, and she's on her dragon the entire time, and this is why we did not see her filming during that major dragon pit scene in Seville. With that being said, I want to wrap this video up. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could, please slap a like on this. Make sure you leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think Tyrion's betrayal is. Also, super special shout out to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. I want to thank you all so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews. Long nights.